I'm never sure how much I believe it when it says we're live, because then I go back and find out that we're not live. But can you hear me? I think you can. Yeah, hi there. How's it going? I'm going to leave the microphone off because it might make it a little louder, but you're going to get more of the background noise if that's okay. I hope you don't mind. Let me put this up here. Just wait for just a second. I appreciate y'all being on with me, folks. It's this is the second live that I've done tonight. If you were on the CBN live, then you saw I just got off of that not too long ago. But it's been a long day. We went out to the West Bank today. We drove almost all the way from Ramallah to Nablus today, through the West Bank. I say we, that's me and my wife and my daughter. And I'm kind of fascinated by the West Bank right now because that's probably the most dangerous place in Israel. Without a doubt, I would say that because of what's going on in the south, in Gaza, Gaza is not a real threat to the Israelis anymore because they're tied up dealing with the IDF. Hezbollah has decided to honor the ceasefire as well, so we haven't seen a lot of rockets for the last couple of days coming from the north either. And so far they have confined their rocket shooting to border areas, even though they have rockets that will reach pretty much anywhere in Israel. I'm not sure what that exactly means, other than they're trying not to escalate this too much, perhaps. But without a doubt, things here in Israel have been pretty safe the last couple days, except for in the West Bank. And if you are Israeli or if you are someone who collaborates with the Israelis or, talks to them or something, it's pretty dangerous for you in the West Bank. We've seen people lynched and murdered. We've seen people shot. There have been protests and even riots. There have been attacks on IDF troops and even full-on firefights over the last week or two, all throughout the West Bank. So I've been kind of thinking, well, as a war correspondent, since they're not allowing me to ride on the back of a tank into Gaza right now, maybe they will at some point, but so far they have not allowed me to do that, then I'm going to try to find the place that has the most to talk about, and that's the West Bank. So, as I have told you, if you've been watching these things, I have yet to find an Arab, a Palestinian, or a Muslim in Israel or in Jordan who will denounce what happened on October 7th. Remember, they butchered babies. They put babies alive into ovens and roasted them while they raped the mothers. They killed little Abigail's parents, a little 4-year-old girl's parents, as they were holding her. Execution style. They put a whole bunch of children in a room and poured gasoline in there and lit the room on fire. They threw hand grenades down into shelters that held families, and so on and so forth. We need to keep talking about that because we can't forget how barbaric these attacks were. And yet, I have yet to find one person in the West Bank, in Old Jerusalem, over in Jordan, anywhere, who is Palestinian or Muslim, who will denounce those attacks, who will say that was a bad thing. The closest they'll come is saying that it was bad for business because all the tourists are gone. It's very unfortunate. But if you try to press them on that, like, what do you mean? Like, they butchered babies. What are you talking about? And they'll say, well, we don't really know that. I'd be like, dude, I was there. Like, I saw the body bags. I saw pieces of bodies laying around in Be'eri. Like, it happened. It really happened. But they won't denounce it. And if they did publicly, they'd probably get lynched and murdered by their own people. The prisoners who are being set free in from Israeli prisons now into the West Bank and East Jerusalem are heroes, and they're being carried on people's shoulders, and they're cheering, and they're draping themselves in Hamas flags and cheering for Hamas and calling for more violence against Israelis. These people are irredeemable when it comes to getting them out of the mindset of violence. Now, do I think all of the people in there think that way? No, I'm not that stupid. It's obvious. I mean, anybody would say you can't take 2.5 million people and say they all think that way. But a lot of them do. Enough of them do. Whoop. Somebody said lost sound. You got sound? Okay, my wife will yell at me if I lose sound. Somebody tried to call me. I'm going to put that on focus. Do not disturb, and then they can't call me. Okay, so obviously 2.5 million people, there's got to be people who are disgusted by that. There's got to be some mothers in there that don't want their children going off and blowing themselves up. But there are enough who do want their kids to blow themselves up. There are enough who do believe that that's what they need to do to make them a serious threat to the rest of Israel. Now, in the West Bank, there are, this is biblical Judea and Samaria, there are about 500,000 Jews living there in villages sprinkled all throughout that whole area. Now, about 80% of the Old Testament took place in that Judea and Samaria area. And so this is obviously historically Jewish land, without a doubt. It has never, ever, ever been a country called Palestine. There has never been a country like that. But yet the Jews have actually offered the West Bank to the Palestinians as their own country 7 times, and have been, they've turned it down every time. So, so I think it's safe to say that there's a serious risk of further attacks coming out of the West Bank. We drove through there today. In one town we drove through that's in one of those B zones. They blocked off all the roads that came onto the main street, because the Jews have to drive through that main street to get back and forth to some of their villages, and they've had attacks on them. Now, you will hear in the press, one of the things I'm going to try to do more of is calling out the press for their shoddy journalism and outright lies regarding Israel. Because people believe that stuff. They believe that Israel is holding children in their prisons. They're not. They're not holding children. They're holding criminals in their prisons. Now, if a kid of 13 years old stabs a bunch of people in Jerusalem, what would you have them do to that kid? Send him to jail. What would we do with him in the United States? We'd send him to jail. If he killed a bunch of people, they'd try him as an adult. That happens all the time. And so they're not holding 8-year-olds in prison. They're not holding 3-year-olds in prison. When the press says children, they are being disingenuous. These are warriors. Most of them are 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. So I want to keep calling this out. Now, there's another lie that's been told, and it has to do with these poor Palestinians. They're just so held down. They're just not, they don't have any opportunity. And if they just had jobs, if they just had opportunity, they could, they would do much better, and they would be peaceful. That's a Pollyannic attitude if ever I've seen one. Now I'm trying to do two things at once here. Hang on a minute. So that attitude, now understand that Palestinians can work in Israel, or at least they could up until October 7th. It's a little harder for them now to get jobs in greater Israel. Palestinians can come work in factories. They have special factories built right outside the A zones that are owned by Israelis that hire Palestinians, where they can make about 4 times what they make in the A zones of the West Bank. So they can make good money. They can have jobs. Most of the settlements that are said to be illegal by the world body, that are inhabited by Israelis, were built by Arabs. They were built by Palestinians. The Jews hire the Palestinians to come build their houses for them. So it's not that they can't work. It's not that there's no jobs for them. There are. But on top of that, the Palestinians receive so much money from and aid from international sources, including the United States, the European Union, the countries all across the Middle East, charities. You know that the largest UN aid program that exists in the world is for the Palestinians only. The Palestinian Authority is one of the largest aid recipients on the planet, bar none. They literally get billions of dollars a year. The United States has given them more than $40 billion since the Oslo Accords were ratified. $40 billion, including in 2020, $600 million in 1 year. So that place could look like Dubai if they wanted it to. In fact, it looks like a big ghost town because they are building lots and lots of houses with that aid with nobody to inhabit them. Why are they doing that? Well, they're trying to take over the land so that the Israelis can't do it. So they want to take over land and keep the Israelis out of it. And so they just build houses everywhere out in the West Bank. You drive through there and it's like, this is really kind of spooky because there's nobody living in all these houses. They're just empty. They don't even have windows. They just put up the structure. That was something I didn't know before. But you can see it. You go out there and you look around and you go, they're big houses, big. 3 stories, 4 stories tall, probably 12 bedrooms, right? They look like an apartment building, but they're just houses, but there's nobody living in them. They're just there. And I'm told that is being done with aid money that is received from the Palestinian, by the Palestinian Authority from the United States, Europe. Get this. During COVID, the United States gave the Palestinian Authority $20.5 million in COVID recovery assistance. Did you know that we were giving COVID assistance to the Palestinians in the West Bank? Did you know that? I didn't know that. That's ridiculous. The EU is the largest international donor of aid, providing over 955 million euros. That's over $1 billion between 2000 and 2020. In 2023, the EU announced an additional 215 million in aid. The World Bank has provided assistance to the Palestinian economy totaling 1.3 billion between 1994 and 2020. 1994 being the year that the Oslo Accords were ratified. The Oslo Accords is what set out those A, B, and C zones in the West Bank, okay? So they have received hundreds of millions of dollars each year since 1994 on average. just in donations from the world body. Yeah, who could keep up with the money the U.S. slings around? That's for sure. Okay? Now, in addition to that, I'm going to go back here. So the United States, I'm even wading through all these numbers is kind of difficult. But since 2020, that's since the Biden administration has taken office, in 1 year, the U.S. provided over $417 million in assistance to the Palestinian refugees through the UN. The U.S. also provides about 28% of the entire budget of the United Nations. So more of the money that we provide to the United Nations actually goes to the Palestinian Authority, aside from what we directly give to the Palestinian Authority. This did happen under Trump as well, not at these levels, but it was happening under Trump too. An overall contribution in 2022 was, let's see, $344 million in 2022. Between September 21 and 2024, the U.S. State Department, through U.S. Aid, plans to provide over $500 million in support to the Palestinian people. And in October 2023, after the attacks, after they butchered babies and put them in ovens, after they raped girls to the point that it broke their pelvic bones, and then shot them in the back of the head while they were still raping them. After that, Joe Biden announced an additional $100 million in assistance to the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. Now, where does all this money go? What does the Palestinian Authority do with all this money? They, like I say, they build lots and lots of empty houses with it. But even more maddening than that, if that makes you sick, wait till you hear what I'm about to tell you. The Palestinian Authority has a program, has several programs, actually. One's called the Martyrs Fund, and one is called the Heroes Fund, that gives a stipend, a living, better than living wage, to Palestinian terrorists who commit atrocities on Israeli citizens. Now, the average Palestinian makes something like $3,800 to $4,000 a year. That's the average per capita wage in the West Bank. It's less than that in Gaza. If a Palestinian comes into Israel and takes a knife and starts stabbing people and gets himself put in jail, thank you, Gary. Absolutely irresponsible for the U.S. to be sending any money to Palestine or until Hamas is no longer their government. Yep. Okay. So can we please don't talk about Ukraine, because I want to do a whole different podcast on Ukraine. So I don't want to get sidetracked talking about Ukraine, because I can give you all kinds of information about Ukraine. You're probably not going to like it, but I'll give you a lot of information about Ukraine. I spent 6 months there last year, and I've been there several times this year already, and I know a lot about what's going on in Ukraine. We can talk about that for days, and if you want me to do a podcast about it, I certainly will, but let's focus on Palestinians, what they're doing. So the average Palestinian makes about $5,000, up to $5,000 a year. In the West Bank, $3,800, I think, is a per capita wage, and in Gaza, it's a little less than that, $2,900, something like that. If a Palestinian comes into Israel and starts stabbing people here and gets put in jail, his family will receive about $5,500 a year from the Palestinian Authority. Okay? If he is killed because he blew himself up on a bus, or if he was shot by the IDF or whatever, then the Martyrs Fund will pay his family about $5,700 from the Martyrs Fund. They will reward the family. And there are cases I've been told where a guy went into to Israel down in the south and shot a bunch of Israelis, and they captured him, and they interrogated him, asked him why he did it, and he said, I'm in my mid-70s and I have terminal cancer and I don't have any retirement plan, and so by shooting Israelis, my family will be taken care of for the rest of their life. So now, because money is durable and fungible, meaning money lasts, money sticks around. If you've got 20 bucks in your pocket, it's going to stay in your pocket for until you spend it, right? It's still gonna be worth 20 bucks when you take it out. And it's fungible, meaning if I have got a drug problem and my family does not want to support my drug habit, but I'm living on the street because I can't hold down a job, and so my family, hey, thank you very much, Lisa, my family gives me money to pay for an apartment. Well, that money is fungible. I can take that money. I don't have to spend it on an apartment. That money will work to buy anything, and it'll work just as well to buy drugs as it would to pay for an apartment. So it's fungible like that. So the United States has known for a long time, I mean, since the 1960s, that the Palestinian Authority, and before that the PLO, was taking donation money and was giving it to people to pay them for attacks committed against Israelis. We've known that. And there's something called the Taylor Force Act. Taylor Force was a U.S. Citizen. He was in the military, and he was killed in a stabbing spree that took place in 2016, just south of Tel Aviv. And so U.S. Congress passed a law called the Taylor Force Act that forbids the Palestinian Authority from using any money that's given to it by the United States for terrorist activities. And if they do give money away for terrorist activities, then we can deduct money from the donations that we give to the Palestinian Authority in accordance with the amount of money we think that they're giving to martyrs. So they do that. They actually deduct a certain amount every year from what we would have given them, and we don't give them quite as much because we know that they're paying terrorists to commit terror acts here in Israel. Do you think the Palestinian Authority cares? They're still getting $300, $400, $500 million a year just from the United States, and more money than that from the EU. So somehow, through some ridiculous, very intellectually dishonest machinations, the U.S. Congress can say, we are not funding terror out of the Palestinian Authority. We are not funding terror against Jews in Israel. But we're still giving $500 million a year to the Palestinian Authority, and they're still paying people to go and commit. They're paying them more than they could make working to go and commit crimes in the... See, there's my noisy person for tonight. I have to say, I mean, I love Israel, but Israelis are not a very patient bunch. Especially on the roads, man. They honk. The lights here, the stoplights turn red, and then you have to stop. And then before they turn green, they'll turn yellow. So they go red, yellow, green, yellow, red, like that. And when they turn yellow, before they even turn green, people are already honking. Like, I think the shortest amount of time ever measured on planet Earth is the amount of time between when the red light turns yellow and the guy behind you in Israel starts honking at you. It's unbelievable. They're just not very patient people. Maybe it's just because this is a big city, and big cities are kind of like that. People tend to be much less graceful in a big city, and I think, having lived on a farm, it's for the same reason that chickens will peck each other until they bleed to death if you put too many chickens in the chicken coop. There's just too many people in one place. I don't like cities very much. I don't like big crowds of people. The older I get, the less I like those big crowds of people. But I don't know. That's just a thought. Folks, let me just mention that if you want to donate here on the Hot Zone, the money that gets raised here will go to try to help people that we are running into either here or somewhere else around the world where they need it. So we're happy to use those donations and try to help people. The motto here on the Hot Zone is we don't make the news. We don't just make the news, we make the news better. We make it better for the people who are hurting in the places that we go. And you can help us with that by liking and subscribing to the Hot Zone, because then the Hot Zone gets showed to more people, gets sent out there, and we make more money that we can give away. Ellen, not Sarah Lee, says, so we're funding Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and funding and sending money to the PA to fund Hamas. That's correct, we are. And then by extension, I think you can say with absolute certainty that American taxpayers helped to fund the October 7th attacks here in Israel. And that's just a shame, folks. That's unbelievable. But it's hard to deny. I saw a piece of a rocket today. I went up to Ha Yovel in the West Bank. If you follow the Israel guys on YouTube, that's them. And I went and sat down with the Israel guys today, and I got a chance to talk to them. And they had a big piece of shrapnel laying on the desk, and I picked it up and was looking at it, and it was obviously from a water pipe. It was a piece of shrapnel from a water pipe. Why? Because the European Union paid hundreds of millions of dollars to install a water system in Gaza, and Hamas then dug those water pipes up and cut them to length and made rockets out of them and then fired them at Israel. And so they are, without a doubt, funding terror against Israel. Now, Christine has a question. What do IDF soldiers in Gaza do during the ceasefire? Hunker down? That's exactly right. They do. They clean, they rest, they refit, and they sort of, look, I was a soldier, and I've been to combat a lot, and I can tell you that when you're not fighting, you're laying around wishing something would happen, because it's boring. Being at war is 90% crushing boredom and 10% sheer terror. So you want to take your wife to Ha Yovel? I think you should do it. That'd be great. Pray Romans 5 at the mosque. Did you see that? Did you see me reciting at the mosque? That was cool. They said I couldn't pray there, but they didn't say I couldn't recite scripture. So I recited scripture at the mosque. If you want to see that, you can go watch that video. It's already up here on the Hot Zone. I will also put up a video from my visit to Ha Yovel today. I got a chance to interview the Israel guys and the Waller family, talk to them a little bit about the risks and what they're facing in the West Bank. I wanted to point out this too. 10 extra hostages per day would be another 3 weeks. Anthony Blinken was already talking about he said, yeah, we got another 2 days added to the ceasefire. We're very excited about that, but we hope to get more. What they hope to get is an indefinite ceasefire, and they hope to keep Israel from accomplishing its objective of wiping out Hamas. There's no question about that. They're making it very clear. I talked to somebody that has connections very high up in the Knesset this morning, and he told me that the leadership in Israel is very upset, very stressed, because the United States is pressuring Israel so much to stop the attacks on Gaza. Okay? They are pressuring Israel to stop right now and not go any further. Israel normally gets a lot of pressure from the United States whenever there's a conflict over here. The U.S. is always trying to get Israel to do what it wants it to do. But they normally put a brave face on it. And the Israelis usually kind of say, yeah, we've decided after consulting with our American partners that we're going to do this or this. But that's not what they're saying now. If you listen to the leadership here, what they're saying now is, we don't want to send aid to northern Gaza, but the United States is forcing us to do it, even though we know that it is not good for Israel. It's not good for the Israelis. Those poor IDF soldiers, it's in the 50s here tonight, and it rained all day long today, nonstop. It just stopped raining about an hour ago. And those soldiers are down there sleeping on the ground in the mud, freezing, miserable, bad food, and just waiting. They just want to get this over with so they can go back home and resume their lives. These are all civilians, most of them. They just want to be done with this. But all over Israel tonight, there's my van that backs up every night. Never fails, man, that guy. I'm going to sneak down there and crawl under his van and cut the wires to his siren that goes off. That is the loudest backup siren I've ever heard in my life. Unbelievable. But all over Israel tonight, there are soldiers, men and women, sleeping on the ground, miserable, wishing they could get back to their families and their jobs and reopen the economy here in Israel. And they can't do it because they have to maintain this ceasefire. Now, everybody's happy to get their hostages back safe and sound, but at what cost? If the cost is that they don't accomplish their objective of removing Hamas, then it's all for nothing, because Hamas will still be around to take more hostages later. The only way that they will stop more hostages from being taken is to completely eradicate Hamas and to so decimate their capability of making war against Israel that it'll never be a problem for them again in our lifetime. How long do I think the ceasefire will go? I think it'll go several more days. When they start running out of women and children, see, the soldiers are actually more valuable as prisoners to Hamas than the women and children are, believe it or not. I mean, they might not be able to get as much for them, but in the past, history says that they can get a lot more of their prisoners out for one soldier than they can for a kid or something like that. How can there be a Palestinian Authority if Hamas rules Palestine? So, Christine, Hamas doesn't rule Palestine. Hamas rules Gaza. So they're two separate entities. The West Bank and Gaza, both of them contain about 2 million, 2.5 million Palestinians. The West Bank is overseen by the Palestinian Authority, and Gaza is overseen by Hamas. That's the difference. I understand that's confusing. Question, how can there be a Palestinian Authority if Hamas... Okay, I already got that one. Okay, anybody else? Let's see here. Let's see. Plan is now... Okay, so what they've done now is they've announced that they're going to go 2 more days. they can get 10 more hostages out every day that the ceasefire goes on. But again, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking on Israel. If this goes on too long, every day that this goes on, the pressure ramps up on Israel to make it permanent, and then they lose. They get more of their hostages back, but they lose in the long run. Chuck, do you think you can get together with Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus for some great updates on his perspective on ultimate goal after the temporary truce? I have reached out to Jonathan Conricus and asked him if he would come on the podcast with me, and I haven't heard back from him yet, but he does communicate with me. He usually takes a few days to respond, though. If some hostages are dead, will Hamas admit to it? Not in so many words, Cindy. They will probably dump the body off somewhere and then claim that Israel killed them. That's what they've done with some of the other ones that died. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Did Israel make Hamas in the 1980s? No, they did not. There cannot be any more extensions of the ceasefire. Okay. Elon Musk came to Israel today. Thank you, Georgie VA. I wanted to get to touch on that because that's pretty interesting. Elon Musk arrived in Israel today and was toured around at some of the kibbutzim down in the south where, like that little American girl, Abigail, little 4-year-old girl that was released yesterday, he got to see the room that she was taken from where her parents were killed as they were holding her. So she watched her parents be executed. This drove me crazy. They showed footage of the Hamas fighters carrying her to the Red Cross truck and handing her over to the Red Cross last night. And they're all dressed up in their full warrior gear with their weapons, and they got masks on, little balaclavas and everything. And they are like, terrible looking. For a 4-year-old, that's got to be super scary. Anyway, not to mention the fact that these are the guys who murdered her parents, and they put her on the Red Cross truck and they close the doors, and then they go, and they smile and wave at her as she drives away. And I just want, how could those Red Cross guys not just open those doors back up and grab those guys by the throat? I mean, holy cow. The chutzpah of those fighters who literally were the people who killed her parents before her eyes, to drag her over and throw her in the truck and then go, "Hi, have a nice ride," and smile. It's just, man, oh man, made me very upset. So Elon Musk came and he got to see where she was taken from. He got to see some of the footage that is not being shown on television because it's too graphic of what Hamas did. And he made a deal with, the reason he came over, I believe, is because of this deal. He made a deal with the Israeli government that he would allow Starlink to be used, his Starlink company, that internet to be used anywhere in Israel, including in Gaza, but only with each Starlink has to be approved or turned on by the Israeli government. Why? So that the Palestinians cannot use Starlink. And he was not disposed to do that at first. He was disposed to allow the Palestinians to use Starlink as well, which would have meant that Hamas was using Starlink and using it to direct drones and kill people. So this is all according to him and the local news here. But after talking with the Israelis are announcing that he has agreed to only let the Israelis use Starlink. Now, I would like to know what you think about that. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Just the fact that one man can have so much power. He's not a president. He's not a head of state. He's just a rich guy. And he can have so much power that he can decide essentially who lives or dies in a war because of the technology that he's invented, that he controls. He can turn it on or off like that. Theoretically, he could do that to your Tesla if you have a Tesla. That's one of the reasons I don't want a electric car ever. I drove a Tesla one time, and wow, that thing is fast. I mean, you hit the gas on a Tesla and it will leave your soul behind. I mean, it just, holy cow, those things have got some get up and go. So it's very fun to drive, but I would never buy one because I don't want the government to be able to turn my car off. And they will do it. There are places in London where they're already talking about doing that. Where, this is an electric only zone. And if you drive in there and you've already, driven your allotted miles for the month, your car just stops working. That would be pretty bad. I don't want that to happen to me. I got several tickets in the Netherlands this year because I was just following Google Maps to try to get where I was going. But apparently I drove through some areas that are supposed to be ultra high efficiency vehicle zones. They weren't marked as far as I know, but then again, I don't read Dutch. And so I got like three $39 tickets for driving through those zones without even knowing it. I'm not a big fan of electric cars. Like I said, those Teslas are fun to drive, but no thanks, I'll pass. I've got a Toyota Land Cruiser ambulance that is my baby. And it's the most expensive lawn ornament that anybody has ever seen because I'm never home to actually drive it. But I love it. It's got a V8 diesel in it and just put 33-inch tires on it. I love it. If you want, I'll put up a picture on my locals page if you want to see my ambulance. So speaking of locals, you can go to follow all of my reporting. I put the Newsmax stuff up there. I put CBN stuff up there. I put, all the other stuff I do, my books, my movies, all that is over on chuckholton.locals.com. Ben, you say, like, actually an ambulance? Well, it's the ones that you see the Red Cross driving in Gaza. If you watch that footage, they're the older model. They look like an old Land Cruiser, like from the 70s, except they didn't sell these in the United States. They only sell them outside the U.S., and they look like a Land Cruiser from the 1970s, but it's a troopy. It's a troop carrier. So it's got fold-down seats in the back that'll hold like 13 people. And we use them for ambulances with the Free Burma Rangers in Syria, and they are awesome. They are great. I love those things. And so I found one for sale that the mine was selling in Panama, and I bought it because this thing was it's a beast. I love it. Anyway, enough about my cars. That's about all I've got for us tonight, folks. If you have any other quick questions, I'll try to answer them. But other than that, we'll have to get going. I appreciate, well, there's a question. Any more open source info about U.S. SOCOM continuing to work with the IDF to track U.S. hostages, even while ceasefire is ongoing? Let's just say Green Beret Networking Task Force Group, whatever. Let's just say it's a foregone conclusion that is happening. And I see U.S. special operators on a regular basis around this area, which we're not far from the U.S. Embassy. It's just around the corner. So there are U.S. SOCOM troops here in downloadable in Kindle. Thank you. I get so much advice about my voice. I know it sounds terrible. I'm really sorry. But it's just, I'm making 2.5 hours of television every day. And the best remedy for getting my voice better is to stop making 2.5 hours of television every day. But right now, I'm trying to bring you the news. Did you get confirmation of inner shaft smoke, gel explosions, and not booby traps from within? Yes, those were not booby traps. I didn't get confirmation. I didn't need confirmation. Those were not booby traps that were blowing up those tunnels in southern Gaza the day before the ceasefire started. Thank you. Amy did not get home yet. I will be taking Amy back to the airport, God willing, tomorrow. Please pray that we can get across the border. They love to turn us back at the border for some reason. They just don't like it, like us crossing into Jordan. But we're going to cross tomorrow morning, get Amy into Jordan, and then get her to the airport and set her up. And then I may stay there with her, may come back. So you may see me doing this from Jordan tomorrow, or I may be doing it from here tomorrow. Just depends on how things go. But I appreciate you praying for her that she gets home safely back to university. Did I hear that an ambassador said, I don't remember what part of Palestine it's from, he said, Israel bombed where the concert was being held. Yeah. I've heard there are some, not just Palestinians saying that, there are some idiot Americans saying that. Colonel McGregor is is one of those who has said that it was the Israelis that killed all those people at the Nova Festival. That has been disproven, and it's that now we got some angry. They just love yelling at each other. Yeah, I'll just write on an eraser board. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So yeah, that has been disproven. The Israelis did not kill a bunch of their own people at the Nova Music Festival. And the guys who are espousing that are the same guys who have been wrong on everything else and are still making money by pushing these absolutely ridiculous conspiracy theories. And so if you want to know, I've only been here since the 10th of October, so I wasn't here on the 7th, but those guys have not been here at all. So take that for what it's worth. What is this about Americans funding the attacks? You want me to, I tell you what, I've been going 47 minutes now, so I don't want to go back and redo that whole thing. But when this is over, if you go back and watch the first 10 minutes of this, this podcast, you can get all the information about how Americans are funding the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority is paying people to commit terror acts against Israel. And all you have to do is go Google it, folks. Don't take my word for it. Go Google it, all right? So we're going to pray, and then we're going to go, all right? God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Lord Jesus, we thank you for the people who are supporting us here on YouTube and over on Locals and everywhere else. We thank you for what that allows us to do to try to be your hands and feet on the ground in bad places around the world. We know that in those bad places, Lord, you are more evident than ever, that when people have everything taken away, you are still there, and you're more apparent to them because there's not much in the way. And when they cry out to you, they find you. So we pray that more people would do that, Father. We pray that the hardship that you bring into our lives would drive us into your arms, and that you would be our faithful God, as you always are. You would prove yourself faithful again and again and again. And Lord, just help us to love the people we meet, even if they're impatient Israelis that are honking at each other and road raging. We just pray, Lord, that you would calm their spirits and mine so I don't get out and slap somebody. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you for being... These guys, man, holy cow. It's just like gridlock down there, and nobody was willing to move, so they just sit there and honk at each other and go like, whoa, ha! And they get all mad at each other out the window. It's just, it doesn't look profitable to me, but whatever. All right, God bless you guys. Take care, and be watching, because I'm going to put the video of Yovel and my visit there today up later on today. All right, God bless you. Take care. We'll see you.